Section 18 of Sun, Moon, and Stars, Astronomy for Beginners. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Read by Donald Warren. Sun, Moon, and Stars, Astronomy for Beginners, by Agnes Giberne, Saturn. He hath made everything beautiful in his time. Ecclesiastes 3:11. The system of Jupiter is a simple system compared to that of Saturn, next in order. Jupiter has only 4 or 5 moons, while Saturn has 8. In addition to these, he has 3 wonderful rings. Neither rings nor moons can be seen without a telescope on account of Saturn's great distance from us, more than 3,000 times the distance of the moon, or upwards of 820 millions of miles. Saturn does not equal his mighty brother Jupiter in size, though he comes near enough in this respect to be called often his twin, just as small pair of worlds, Venus and Earth, are called twins. While Jupiter is equal in size to over 1,200 Earths, Saturn is equal to about 700 Earths, and while Jupiter is equal in weight to 300 Earths, Saturn is only equal in weight to 90 Earths. He appears to be made of very light materials, not more than 3/4 as dense as water. This would show the present state of Saturn to be very different from the present state of the Earth. We are under the same uncertainty in speaking of Saturn as in speaking of Jupiter. Like Jupiter, Saturn is covered with dense masses of varying clouds, occasionally opening and allowing the astronomer peeps into the lower cloud levels, but rarely or never permitting the actual body of the planet to be seen. The same perplexities also come in here, to be answered much in the same manner. We should certainly expect that in a vast globe like Saturn, the strong force of attraction would bind the whole into a dense solid mass, instead of which Saturn is much the least solid of all the planets. He seems to be made up of a very light substance surrounded by vapor. One explanation can be offered. What if the globe of Saturn be still in a red-hot molten state, keeping such water as would otherwise lie in oceans on the surface, floating aloft in masses of steam, the outer parts of which condense into clouds? No one supposes that Jupiter and Saturn are in the same condition of fierce and tempestuous heat as the Sun. They may have been so once, but they must now have cooled down very many stages from that condition. Though no longer, however, a mass of far-reaching flames and firing cyclones, the body of each may have only so far cooled as to have reached a stage of dull molten red heat, keeping all water in the form of vapor, and sending up strong rushes of burning air to cause the hurricanes which bear to and fro the vast cloud masses overhead. The diameter of the largest moon is about half the diameter of the Earth, or much larger than Mercury. The 4 inner satellites are all nearer to Saturn than our moon is to us, though the most distant of the 8 is 10 times as far away. The inner moon takes less than 23 hours to travel around Saturn, and the outer one over 79 days. A great many charming descriptions used to be worked up, with Saturn as with Jupiter, respecting the magnificent appearance of the 8 radiant moons, joined to the glorious shining of the rings, as quite making up for the diminished light and heat of the Sun. But undoubtedly, Saturn's cloudy covering would much interfere with observations of the moon by any inhabitants of the solid body within, supposing there were any solid body at all. And though it sounds very wonderful to have 8 moons instead of 1 moon, yet all the 8 together give Saturn only about 1/16th part of the light which we receive from our own 1 full moon, so much more dimly does the Sun light them up at that enormous distance. One more possible proof of Saturn's half-liquid state is to be found in his occasional very odd changes of shape. Astronomers have been startled by a peculiar bulging out at one side, taking off from his roundness and giving a square-shouldered aspect. We may not, perhaps, count it impossible that a solid globe should undergo such tremendous upheavals and outbursts as to raise a great portion of its surface 500 or 600 miles above the usual level, the change being visible at a distance of 800 millions of miles. It is, however, far easier to understand the possibility of such an event in the case of a liquid seething mass than in the case of a solid ball. On the other hand, this alteration of outline may be caused simply by a great upheaval, not of the planet's surface, but of the overhanging layer of clouds. Some such changes, only much slighter, have been remarked in Jupiter. And now to the rings. Nothing like them is to be seen elsewhere in the solar system. They are believed to be 3 in number, though some would divide them into more than 3. Passing completely around the whole body of Saturn, they rise, one beyond another, to a height of many thousands of miles. The inner edge of the inner ring, an edge perhaps 100 miles in thickness, is more than 10,000 miles from the surface of Saturn, or more strictly speaking, from the outer surface of Saturn's cloudy envelope. A man standing exactly on the equator and looking up, even if no clouds came between, would scarcely be able to see such a slender dark line at such a height. This dark transparent ring, described as dusky or purple, and known as the crepe ring, rises upwards to a height or breadth of 9,000 miles. Closely following it is a ring more brilliant than Saturn himself, over 18,000 miles in breadth. When astronomers talk of the breadth of these rings, it must be understood that they mean the width of the band measured upwards in a direction away from the planet. Beyond the broad bright ring is a gap of about 1,700 miles. Then follows the third ring, 10,000 miles in breadth, its outermost edge being at a height of more than 48,000 miles from Saturn. The color of the third ring is grayish, much like the gray marking often seen on Saturn. At one time it was supposed that these rings were solid. They are now believed to consist of countless myriads of meteorites, each whirling in its own appointed pathway around the monster planet. As already said, leaving out of the question the cloudy atmosphere, a man standing on the equator would see nothing of the ring. A man standing at the North Pole or the South Pole of Saturn could see nothing either, since the rings would all lie below his horizon. But if he traveled southward from the North Pole or northward from the South Pole towards the equator, he would in time see the ringed arch appearing above the horizon, rising higher and growing wider with every mile of his journey. And when he was in a position to view the whole broad expanse, the transparent half-dark belt below, the wide radiant band rising upward over that, and the grayish border surmounting all, he would truly have a magnificent spectacle before him. This magnificent spectacle is, however, by no means always visible, even from those parts of Saturn where alone it ever can be seen. The rings shine merely by reflected sunlight. Necessarily, therefore, while the sunbeams make one side bright, the other side is dark. And not only this, but the rings throw broad and heavy shadows upon Saturn in the direction away from the sunlight. In the daytime they probably give off a faint shining, something like our own moon when seen in sunlight. During the summer nights they shine, no doubt, very beautifully. During the winter nights it so happens that their bright side is turned away, and not only that, but during the winter days the rings, while giving no light themselves to the wintry hemisphere of Saturn, completely hide the sun. When it is remembered that Saturn's winter, that is, the winter of each hemisphere in turn, lasts during 15 of our years, and when we hear of total eclipses of the sun lasting unbroken through 8 years of such a winter, with not even bright rings to make up for his absence, we cannot think of Saturn as a tempting residence. The sun gives Saturn at its best only about 1/90th of the heat and light that he gives to our Earth, but to be deprived of even that little for 8 years at a time does indeed sound somewhat melancholy. Anyone looking from one of the nearer moons might have splendid views of Saturn and his rings in all their varying phases. For Saturn is a beautiful globe wrapped in his changeable envelope of clouds, which seen through a telescope are lit up often with rainbow tints of blue and gold, a creamy white belt lying usually on the equator, while around extend the purple and shining and gray rings, sometimes rivaling in bright colors Saturn himself. The moons of Saturn do not, like those of Jupiter, travel in one plane. End of section 18.